Put this on Do Not Disturb.
So, we go from a depressing week talking about Catholic issues to a fun week of celebration to another depressing week of talking about Catholic issues, where we are going to have to nail something to the door of the Vatican, in this case, a 96th thesis. My name is Micah Curtis.
And I'm Alex Baldwin, also known as The Hatman.
And welcome to Micah and The Hatman on Politics Live. Alright, we are back, and I am exhausted. I am out of ketosis and very low on energy, but I shall continue to try to get this done. So, rants will probably be extra angry because, should I go ahead and I should probably give everyone an update on my knee. So, I saw my doctor a couple days ago, and the prognosis was that there's no bone damage. You know, there is, however, the possibility that I have a torn meniscus. So, I will be seeing a specialist in a couple of weeks to scope my knee, which will be uncomfortable, and see how bad the damage is, and if it's not bad at all, it'll heal on its own. But needless to say, if it's torn and it's not healing on its own, they're gonna have to go in and fix it through surgery. So hopefully it is healing pretty well, though. I was actually doing a little bit of shadow boxing earlier today, and it held up okay. There was pain after I was done, but it wasn't searingly bad. So I'm gonna start doing exercises on a daily basis again, just to kind of keep myself in shape, because I've started to put back on water weight, which is not good. So, Hatman, shall we get into it?
I suppose we shall.
Alright, so as folks who are already seeing things are seeing, the topic of to start off is the Pope problem. So, between 2 weeks ago and now, the story about the molestations in the Pennsylvania area from Catholic priests have only gotten worse. And one of those particular stories was that the current Pope, Pope Francis, knew about the sins of, oh God, what's his name? My brain is not wanting to work. Cardinal McCarrick. That Francis had not only known of Cardinal McCarrick's problems, but had known before he was the Pope. And now, after the accusations by Archbishop Vigano, which is a huge testimony, so huge, by the way, that when the Pope was making an address in Vatican City, the crowd was chanting for Vigano. But, Hatman and I were talking about this yesterday on DMs on Twitter. And apparently, according to a source close to Pope Benedict, there were private sanctions that were placed on this particular cardinal that he regularly disobeyed. Let me go ahead and read this. This comes from Paul Bois at the Daily Wire. Source said the allegations of abuse of seminarians by McCarrick, now 88, were certainly something known to Benedict. And he said, certainly it was known that McCarrick was a homosexual. That was an open secret. We were all aware of that. However, it's important to note there is no evidence church authorities, either in the Vatican or the U.S., were aware of any allegations of sexual abuse by minors by McCarrick until long after Benedict had resigned. But, as mentioned in the Register's initial report on the testimony on August 25th, the Pope Emeritus was unable to remember very well how the matter was handled, according to the source. As far as Benedict could recall, the source said the instruction was essentially that McCarrick should keep a low profile. There was no formal decree, just a private request. The source also noted that after he had retired as Archbishop of Washington, D.C., McCarrick continued to be very able and influential at high levels, ecclesiastical, cultural, and political, and so could ignore the sanctions imposed upon him. Effectively, he was able to not to hear what he had to hear. And, yeah, needless to say, after Francis took power, said restrictions that were placed prior have been lessened, to say the least. And this disturbs me on a few different levels. First level is the simple fact that this monster was not excommunicated. Second, that the previous pope, Benedict, had thought that it was okay to just put him in some sort of an exile, as if that's enough, as opposed to turning him over to the police. And then the simple idea that Pope Francis was buddy-buddy with this psychopath. So, Hatman, I get the sense you wanted to say something, so go ahead. I've got a speech, but it can wait a minute.
Well, you brought up excommunication, and I'm wondering now if that could be brought back, because it's largely like not at all used nowadays. It's incredibly rare, and it's often used as like a last resort sort of thing. But even then, like I'm wondering if it's just the stigma behind it, because now, you know, there's a greater historical understanding of the church, and excommunications are seen as like, oh well, the church is getting petty about something. But I'm wondering if bringing those back would be a benefit to show that the church is serious about these allegations, because that sends a damn statement. Excommunication can be powerful. It is intended to be powerful. So I'm wondering if that will have an impact. I'm not sure. Honestly, I'm not sure.
I'm of the opinion that we are seeing the same thing that we see with a lot of institutions, is that at this point they're primarily existing to self-sustain, even though they say that they have a higher mission. Because people have been defending the fact that Pope Francis has said absolutely nothing about these allegations. There was a cardinal in Chicago who said he has a forward thought. He's worried about discussing the environment and immigration.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
So you're telling me that global warming and immigration, two things that the Vatican can do nothing about, is more of a priority than your own priests raping children and seeing no jail time or excommunication or anything. And what's worse is the political left have been just barreling over one another in a race to defend the Pope. because he is one of them.
There's no defense for this.
There is not. But
there's
here's
absolutely no defense for this.
Here's something interesting, though. I thought of this when I was writing earlier. Do you remember how quickly the left jumped to defend Sarah Nyberg during Gamergate?
I do.
Sarah Nyberg's a piece of shit. Pardon my French. But piece of trash. Terrible human being. I think that goes without saying. But people tumbled over themselves to get in line to defend Sarah Nyberg. A child molester. I mean, a guy freaking Chris Clueless, defended Sarah Nyberg multiple times. And then wonders why he's no longer relevant. Anyway, the absolute insanity of this is just mind-boggling to me. It's so strange that the Catholic Church in this scenario has, for better or worse, turned itself into a parody, because the Babylon Bee, which is a Christian satirical site, basically the Christian version of The Onion, put out a satirical article saying that the Pope would distract from this. He was more focused on climate change, and then somebody says that's what he's more focused on.
Oh my God. How do you save the world when you don't have your own house in order?
Well, that's one thing that, you and I say. It's a part, something that's in Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, is that you can't criticize the world when your house is not in order. You can't. You have to have things in order. You have to be able to make sure that your ship is sailing true.
You don't worry about the splinter in someone else's eye when you have a log in your own.
Matthew-Sixth, I believe. So, needless to say, we're obviously both perturbed by this. But what gets me, so I've said over and over and over again that I'm the son of a preacher man. What some don't know is that I trained to become a preacher as well. I obviously did not do so, but if you wonder where my speaking ability is and my just sermons out of nowhere, that's where that comes from. Gave my first sermon when I was 12 years old. So I've been speaking in front of hundreds of people for a long time. And I think that the Catholic Church is in need of its own walk away. In a lot of ways. I think that a lot of people really do need to walk away from Catholicism. Not into atheism. Because here's the thing. Pope Francis sucking at his job does not mean that God is not there.
No.
None of this means that God is not there. He is there. He was there. He will always be there. He is. There is no changing that. If you are Catholic and you are thinking about walking away from it, don't walk away from Christianity. Catholicism is a denomination and nothing else. Despite what everyone else would like you to think, it does not represent all of Christianity. It certainly does not represent me. I'm not a Catholic. Doesn't represent Hatman either. You could classify me as an evangelical, though my theology is closer to, or the theologians I tend to read are more along the lines of, or most of them are from the Lutheran school of thought. But oddly enough, it is Martin Luther is the reason that we titled this podcast what we did. Is because there is a necessity for another thesis to be nailed on the door of the Vatican. Here's what I wrote, and I think we're going to turn this into a t-shirt. It is necessary for a man who claims to serve Almighty God. He must realize his low status. If he is to lead, he is to follow. If he is to take charge, he must serve. If he sins against his fellow man, if he violates the innocence of children, if he lusts for what is not his, he should be brought low. He should submit himself to God, and he should pay the price of justice. There is no one like God, and there is no man above judgment. Deus Volt.
Deus Volt indeed.
And this is my belief, and I'm going to try to reword this a bit better, but that is my belief about leadership. And my belief doesn't come from some guy in a funny-looking hat. That comes from God. That is what is in the Bible. That is the example given to us by Christ. And oddly enough, this is why I'm not a Catholic. There is no one between God and I. No saints, no priests, no popes, no nothing. Nothing between God and I. I said in a video that I did, not just a few days ago, do not place your faith in man. Man can become faithless. I wrote a paper when I was in high school about faith, about what faith really is. And basically, there was a discussion I had at lunch like 2 days beforehand. That between myself and another student where they had said something about faith making no sense. And I said, we all have faith. And we do. When you get up and you go out and you start your car, you have faith that everything is going to work properly and is going to get you from point A to point B. As I've learned over this last week, when you jump rope, you have faith that your knees aren't going to buckle under the weight of your body and tear something. You have faith that it's going to work. Every single day, every person puts their faith in something, whether they admit it or not. But the one commonality that is often the case, whether you believe or you don't believe in God, is that you put your faith in the things that are fallible. And in an odd way, it is one of the funniest parts of the human condition, is that we continuously put faith in things that we know will fade away. Because everything except God has a beginning and an end. Sometimes I wonder if the Vatican needs to exist. If it needs to exist. Is there a need for it? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that question, but I've been thinking quite a bit about it. What I would say is this. What happened to those kids is more evidence than I need ever in my life to say that this is why Christ must always be the one thing that is pursued by a man of God above all things. You don't pursue the church, you don't pursue carnal desire, you pursue God, and everything else falls by the wayside. Everything else becomes secondary. And oddly enough, becomes that much easier to manage. Over the last 6 or 7 months, I feel like my relationship with God has become that much better. And when I have fears, which I have quite a few of, and I have doubts, and I have my struggles, I don't beat myself up about them anymore. It feels like another form of training. That God's my coach in a lot of ways. That He's there saying, get back up, do it again. Keep going until you do it better. And it's easier to do every day because that's where my sight is. When you lose sight of that, especially as a person of power, you fall into the exact same traps as everyone else with power does. You assume that you are greater than God. Whether it's a conscious thing or a subconscious thing. That's why I say, in this, you must submit yourself. That word submit I use with good reason. I try to think that I pick my words very carefully. What is submission? I'm not talking about some S&M thing or anything along those lines. So get your mind out of the gutter. Especially you, Hatman. But anyway, I always think of the most intense prayers have always ended with me prostrating myself. Not as hard as the priest from Berserk. You know, I don't have the square nose. But and I don't plan on killing anyone with a Bible either. Not planning, you know, it's just saying. But point being is that you have to look at what the purpose of falling is. In a way, punishment is the check that we have, basically against continued sin, especially as a leader.
It's discipline.
Yes, it teaches us.
Exactly.
I was thinking a lot about Paul while I was cooking dinner yesterday, and thinking about the road to Damascus. That the idea that God had to strike a man blind so he could finally see the truth. It's made me look at guilt differently. It's made me look at punishment differently. It's made me look at discipline differently. And these ways of looking at things are things that our society in general has lost touch of. We think of punishment as a truly terrible thing. Well, what is the purpose of punishment? It is reinforcement of an idea, of a truth. And if you aren't punished, like what happens if you don't punish a child for bad behavior? They keep doing it over and over again. So these priests never punished for the sins that other people knew about, but simply they continuously covered up for over and over and over again because they were so worried about losing believers. And yet, what they have in front of them could threaten to destroy the institutions that they live to protect. Meanwhile, if the Catholic Church had allowed these men to fall, had kicked them out, had said, you have disobeyed, you have not fulfilled your charge to your congregation, to the rest of the church, and to Almighty God, you are out. You are gone. You will submit yourself to the judgment of your peers. And you are a human. You are a man. You are not God. Ergo, all man is your peers. You will submit to their judgment. You will submit to their laws. And you will pay. And maybe someday you will redeem yourself. Maybe. And God will forgive you. But you must pay for your sins to your peers because you damaged them.
The bill comes due.
Amen. If I had the chance, I would nail this to the door of the Vatican and walk away. Because a church that is focused more on power than evangelism, on power above belief, on power above the love of God, is not a church. It's just another government building.
For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world but lose his soul?
And there have been a lot of souls lost here. So for those of you out there who are people of the faith, before we move on to our next topic, my advice in these trying times is not to spend all of your time angry at the church. I'm not saying don't get angry. What I'm saying is this. Don't focus on the servants. Focus on the word. And anytime you feel anger about this, my encouragement would be to read the Bible and center yourself on the actual Word of God, because that's what's most important. The Logos, the Word. It's something that the Catholic Church throughout history has continually lost sight of, but you, on the other hand, and the rest of us, don't. Don't focus on the will of God. Don't focus on the will of the church. Focus on the will of God. Deus Vult is my catchphrase for a reason, because what God wills is more important than what man wills. Deus Vult.
Deus Vult.
All right, let's move on. So, Florida. It's a nice state. Been there twice. Would love to go back. But they're having some gubernatorial issues. A bit of monkey business,
as it were.
Yes. Hatman, give us the lowdown here.
So, governor's race. Primaries ended on Tuesday. You have Ron DeSantis as the Republican seeking the governorship, and Andrew Gillum, I believe is the pronunciation.
Yes.
Is the Democrat that is challenging.
The commie.
More or less. Well, he's socialist, communist, more or less the same thing. He's actually under investigation for, I believe, some sort of fraud, if I'm not mistaken.
The socialist under investigation for fraud. Who'd have thunk it?
I know, right? Only a matter of time. But anyway, so day after the primaries, Ron DeSantis made a little comment. He said, "Don't monkey this up by electing a socialist." Andrew Gillum, for those who do not know, is a black man.
Yes, he's the guy on the left of the picture that you're seeing right now.
Yes. So, naturally, people lost their shit because he said something about a monkey in reference to a black man. Now, Micah, I don't know how common it is for you, but at least here in the South, don't monkey this up. It's not exactly common, but it's not totally unheard of either. Just like don't monkey with it.
Yeah.
for example. I mean, monkey is basically a stand-in for fuck.
Exactly.
Because, you don't want to be vulgar, especially around children.
Mm-hmm.
So, I heard from my dad quite a bit, oh, don't monkey with that thing. Because, of course, I was known for monkeying with things.
Yes, exactly.
But, so I don't quite understand. Well, I sort of understand the allegations of racism, but honestly, I feel like it's reaching way too far.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this reminded me of a CNN broadcast where there were two men talking, a white guy and a black guy, and somebody said, "Out of your cotton picking mind." And then the black guy got super offended because he's a lefty and he gets offended by everything.
Mm-hmm. See, that's definitely not unheard of in the South.
No,
that's more archaic, but that's a thing.
Well, it's basically a way of not saying out of your goddamn mind.
Mm-hmm.
So, oddly enough, meanwhile, you can be on the left and you can call Ben Carson a coon, or you can call Candace Owens and Uncle Tom, and not get in trouble if you're white.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I still find it hilarious. Not that Candace Owens being accosted by people is hilarious, but that white people were calling Candace Owens, a black woman, a white supremacist, while she's trying to eat out. What in the anyway? Needless to say, though, this is a giant nothing. I mean, the media is trying to make this to be huge because they want their guy to win. Mm-hmm. They want DeSantis to lose. They want they want to turn Florida blue. Now, I haven't seen what the polls look like. Florida is
last one I looked at had DeSantis ahead by 3 points.
Yeah, and Florida is a pretty red state. And not to mention, it's like I actually saw an article in the Post from a Cuban immigrant who is a registered Democrat who is legitimately worried about the left embracing socialism. That shouldn't surprise you. It shouldn't surprise you that Ted, I remember somebody had said, if Ted Cruz is Latino, why isn't he a socialist? I'm like, you're asking me why the son of the Cuban immigrant isn't a socialist? Same thing with Marco Rubio. Are you serious? But anyway.
I wonder.
Yeah. But regardless, these days Florida's fairly red enough, I would think. They've always been kind of mixed here and there, but I don't think that DeSantis is going to lose here. My advice for him is don't use a turn of phrase again. But I think that enough people are seeing this and saying this isn't racist.
What gets me is, of course, the left is saying this is a dog whistle because he didn't try to walk back the comments or anything. Well, I mean, he didn't realize that people are going to take offense to it. I mean, Occam's razor here.
Yeah.
I mean, but it seems like this is a racist dog whistle. It is becoming a more common thing.
Oh yeah.
Among the left, an easy way to say we can't prove that you said something bigoted, but you said something bigoted.
Yeah. And it never sticks. That's the thing about it.
Well, it doesn't stick outside of the left.
Yeah. Well, that's because leftists aren't very bright. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Harvard versus Asians.
Oh.
So, yeah. What happened here?
So, you know affirmative action, right?
Oh, I very much know about affirmative action.
You know how affirmative action is supposed to help underrepresented minorities, right?
Or so they say.
Well, definitely, or so they say, because it turns out that Harvard was actually capping the number of Asian Americans or Asians or of Asian descent, whichever box you want to tick on the race bit of your application, capped that so they could advance other less qualified students of other races. Because no one likes to include Asians in those pesky statistics about who's doing better, white people or people of color. And the Justice Department, siding with these applicants, coming down on Harvard.
As they should.
Yep. Harvard, quote, uses a vague personal rating that harms Asian American applicants' chances for admission and may be infected with racial bias. Who'd have thunk? Engages in unlawful racial balancing and has never seriously considered race-neutral alternatives in its more than 45 years of using race to make admissions decisions. It seems to me like this is more of a statement against affirmative action.
Well, yeah, as it should be, because affirmative action is downright irrelevant these days.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, there are, and this is something that, you know, we've said quite a bit on this podcast over the last couple of years, is that there is nothing within the law that is holding down anyone of different skin colors, or rather those who are not as pale as you and I. Mm-hmm. There is nothing there. Nothing stopping them from becoming successful. And in every office building I've worked in or guarded or anything over the past several years, I have seen people who are rich, people who are poor, of different skin colors and so forth. What you look like doesn't matter anymore. It hasn't mattered for a long time. So trying to say that it does is just nonsense.
Affirmative action is racist. Just plain and simple.
Exactly.
Discrimination on the basis of race. That's racism. I don't know how else to explain this. I mean, if colleges really want to figure out how to get people that are underrepresented in there, cut race, cut names, cut the personally identifying information like that out of applications. You're given a number, and if your number's called, then you get in. Simple as that. And for God's sake, cut the damn legacy programs too. If you got someone who got into college, you should not get a higher chance of getting in just because someone in your immediate family did, or just because someone in your family donated millions of dollars and got their name on a building or whatever. You shouldn't get in on favors. The proper word escapes me right. Nepotism. There we go. You shouldn't get in on nepotism. Mm-hmm. That's bullshit. You should not be able to pay a little bit of extra to the school just to bounce in. And I know people who've gotten in on that. And they did not deserve it. They stole a place that could have gone to somebody else, as far as I'm concerned. So no, fix that. Fix that. That's a problem. Not lack of diversity, lack of representation. Nonsense.
Yeah. Meritocracy should be the king of things here.
Exactly.
You know, leave race out. What have they done? That's it. That's all that should matter. I don't see anybody clamoring for to let unathletic white people into the NBA, so it's a bit ridiculous.
Nope.
So, by the way, just for a note, Elizabeth Warren was a teacher there, and she's not speaking out against what Harvard did to Asian people. Just saying.
I wonder why. Pocahontas.
Yeah. Okay. Burgers.
Burgers?
Burgers. I'm looking at an image that looks very delicious right now.
Oh well, you might want to look away.
Yeah.
Remember, keto.
Yeah. I'm going to have to minimize its windows. I'm going to look at something else. Okay. So, In-N-Out Burger apparently is getting boycotted by people who don't eat meat or something. Hatman, what's going on here?
Oh no, it's not. It's not by people who don't eat meat. It's by people who hate Republicans.
Oh.
In-N-Out Burger gave an estimated $25,000 donation to the, I believe, the California Republican Party. And, yeah, chairman of the California Democratic Party basically called for a boycott. It's time to hashtag boycott In-N-Out. Let Trump and his cronies support these creeps, perhaps animal style.
Huh?
Animal style is a variant of one of their burgers, if I understand it correctly. I don't know, because I live on the East Coast. I don't In-N-Out.
Yeah, I'd never even heard of it. Like, so, yeah. I've heard good things, but, like, I only just recently, like, last year did, whatchamacallit, not Chick-fil-A. I've had Chick-fil-A long before this. But, oh, Whataburger. So...
Oh, I haven't been to one of those either.
They're awesome. But anyway, this is gonna backfire, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. It's like Chick-fil-A all over again. It's absolutely like Chick-fil-A all over again. Except Chick-fil-A didn't give to a Republican Party. It was like focus on the family or some other right-leaning group.
Yeah.
And then people, moaned and complained and whined and said they were going to boycott. And then Chick-fil-A posted record profits that year. I believe actually that quarter.
Yeah.
And
now it's
Chick-fil-A's been doing very well since.
Yeah, now it's the most popular fast food place in America right now, apparently.
Third most popular fast food place in America. And it's pretty much only serving the East Coast. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, Chick-fil-A came out on top. I mean, they basically said, we're not going to donate to political causes anymore, and stuck to that. And that was it. And the boycotters, of course, said, well, that's not good enough because you had the audacity to do that in the first place. Chick-fil-A didn't say anything else. They didn't capitulate anymore. And they're doing pretty damn well for themselves. I mean, when both of the Chick-fil-A's in my city have to install double-wide drive-thrus, I'd say they're doing pretty damn good.
Yep. So I remember when I went to Chick-fil-A at 1 o'clock in the afternoon when I was in Austin, Texas. And they had 2 drive-thru lanes that had to be personally manned by people going out to cars and continuously taking orders as they moved down the line. And then there were other people who would direct you to where to park, and then they'd bring your order out. Like, a lot of times whenever the left does these sorts of boycotts, they almost always don't work. Because oftentimes they're getting boycotted for stupid freaking reasons, and this is one of them.
Yep. Who is it? Ghost5410 in the chat. Chick-fil-A is run by Christians and left lost their shit over it.
Oh, yeah.
If I understand it correctly, In-N-Out is too. It's as far as I know, they put Bible verses on their cups and bags and stuff. And if you're in the North Carolina, South Carolina area, Cookout does the same thing too. Support your local In-N-Out, Chick-fil-A, Cookout, etc.
Indeed. Unless you're like me and you can't have bread, in which case tell other people to eat there instead.
Yeah, that is true. Cookout's got good food too. If those of you who are at least in an area where you can get it have not had it yet, great food, even better milkshakes.
Oop, hit my microphone there. Didn't mean to. Okay, so we are at that point of the day. The first Q&A session of year 3. So, folks,
let's do it.
What do you got for us? I don't recall seeing anything from Twitter. If you want to send us questions via Twitter before the podcast, if you're going to miss it, you can always use the hashtag Micah Q&A. Please tag one of us in it, just so that
Yes.
we know that it's being asked.
Now, I get it. Apparently, Twitter got rid of their shadow bans ahead of Jack Dorsey's testimony before Congress. We'll talk about that next weekend. But still, it's best to tag us, just in case they bring it back or decide to do some other kind of fuckery. Is there anything on Discord at all?
There was a question posed to us about the renegotiations of NAFTA, but neither of us have really read up on it enough. It was asked by Rick to really comment on it. So
yeah, that was actually what we were going to cover before the In-N-Out thing, but we were both woefully unprepared for that. So apologies, but it's better to just keep quiet on a topic that we're not going to be able to give a reasoned take on.
Pretty much. All right, so let's have a look here, and we'll pick some from Twitter. Just remember, folks, if you ask us a bunch of questions over Twitter during the podcast, we're just going to pick one, and then we'll do the rest on the overflow. All right, so Elric of Melopony wanted to know, what's our opinion on copyright law? Personally, I think it needs serious reformation, since at this point it seems less about protecting authors, more about letting megacore hoard IPs.
Yes, DMCA needs to be revamped seriously.
Yeah, I would agree completely. I think that oftentimes we tend to lose franchises. They just sit there and nothing happens with them for no reason. And on top of that, there are, some of the companies are unwilling to take bids or or unwilling to publish games that small independent developers would love to work for them to make them more money, just because it's not in their plans for the quarter. It's silly. So let's see here. From Twitter as well. Duke of Tumwater asked us a bunch, but we're gonna get one. So, why is it that white identitarians are considered right-wing, but non-white identitarians are considered left-wing? Because it's more so based on the beliefs that they have outside of that. White identitarians tend to be hyper traditional, and left-wing do not.
Yeah.
So
left identitarianism, it's linked heavily with Marxism, because it's the idea that the proletariat is stronger than the bourgeoisie.
Exactly. And on the right, it's often tied to old fascist beliefs. So
yeah.
I do think that there are sort of two sides of the same coin in a lot of respects, especially when it comes to authoritarianism, but that's a discussion for another time. Talon Silverbane asks via, one question per, so we'll have to save the other one. Thoughts on John McCain and Razorfist claiming that he politicized his own death? I have been incredibly disappointed by both sides on that particular issue. And we'll put it that way. I think that John McCain saying Trump can't come to my funeral is ridiculously low, and I would think that a man at the end of his life would be a bit more gracious. At the same time, Donald Trump said some shit about him during the primaries that was low too. And he said it for reasons that I didn't really understand. But it is what it is. It's over. I just think that the pettiness is just exactly what it sounds like. Petty.
Yeah. I will say this, because Eve asked a similar question about political funerals and stuff. Had John McCain been closer with Trump, or at least on good terms with him, his funeral would not be getting the amount of coverage. His death would not be getting the amount of coverage that mainstream media has been giving it.
Exactly.
Someone, I don't remember who it was, had differences in how the Huffington Post treated John McCain in 2008, basically calling him senile, racist, a terrible person, and just this year, of course, he's a war hero, a legend.
Yep.
But also about also about him fucking around with his funeral, not inviting Sarah Palin, I think, was telling.
Yeah, that was especially low. So
yeah,
I kind of regretted saying all those nice things last week. I honestly do. Like, that's...
Well, still, you really don't want to speak ill of the dead.
Yeah.
When it's so close. Yeah.
All right,
but,
here's
we'll move on.
Yeah, let's see here. Eve asked why I can't eat bread. I am currently on the keto diet. And since I have a knee injury, I'm struggling to keep my weight down. So it's been a rough last couple of days. I'm hoping that the sweating that I'm doing right now is not from my suit, but that I'm starting to go through the keto flu again. So, which I would much rather have. Let's see here. Eclectic 1995 asks a really good one. Why were term limits not a thing when it came to state senators? So at the time, there was a bit of a social decorum in regards to service to the government, that there was supposed to be a cutoff point, and up until FDR, there wasn't an actual law that set it for the presidency either. There should be one, by the way, but at this point, because people have abused their power.
Because of Washington. Washington largely instituted that tradition. 2 terms, and then you're out.
Yeah.
And FDR, of course, decided, yeah, fuck that.
Pretty much, because that's FDR for you. And now more people are following his lead in the Senate, and they shouldn't be.
No, they absolutely should not be. And you've also got some people saying, whatever amendment that is that gave term limits, they're saying that should be abolished. If only because that means we would have gotten more of Obama.
Mm-hmm.
No, hell no.
These are the same people that think 16-year-olds should be able to vote, though.
Yeah, again, hell no. It's preposterous. I mean, you're supposed to have a president, not a king. What you want is a damn king that can choose his successor or her successor.
Yes.
No, sorry. Well, a king or queen, monarch.
Yes.
This is not a monarchy for a reason.
Thank God for it.
Yes. Thank God for Washington, who decided to lay down his power, who chose not to become a monarch. We could learn from his example.
Amen to that. I don't know if a lot of people noticed, but we are not fans of monarchy, Hat and I.
No.
We are too Lockean, I guess you could say, with our philosophies. Like, we...
In the words of the Hound, fuck the king.
Fuck the king, yeah. Read John Locke's 2 Treatises of Government, the opening of that book about kingship. That's us, basically. Our thoughts completely. Let's see here. Sargon's in Rome right now. You can ask him to nail the Nintey-Sixth Thesis to the Vatican. What I wrote being nailed to the door of the Vatican by an atheist would be a little silly. Just saying. Do you think the left is slowly becoming like the neocons? Their bootlicking of corporate entities in support of warmongers like McCain has really been weird. They've been shifting socialist, though.
Well, socialist to an extent.
Well, yeah, to an extent. But they like money. But that's the thing about socialists. Socialists are never consider themselves or never consider the idea that they might be a pauper in their own or they might be a serf in their own nation.
Nope.
But nobody ever does. No revolutionary ever does. They think they're going to be the ones in charge.
You really think Stalin would have wanted to become a serf? I think
Stalin
and
a salt mine.
I can't help but think of Thanos.
Yeah.
the man who actually did become a farmer after having infinite power.
Yeah, exactly. What about a Polish-style elected monarchy? No.
How is it a monarchy?
Oh yeah. Say, but even I want 0 monarchies. I have a king. It's Christ.
Yeah,
I don't need anybody else.
That's it.
And that was John Locke's point. What do you need a king for if you have God? Why would God didn't even want to appoint a king in his own nation, in the nation of the Jews. The people demanded that. He's like, fine, here you go. Here's Saul. Guess what? Saul screwed up. Then, here comes David. David screwed up. Here comes Solomon. Solomon screws up. And then it continued to go over and over and over again until the Babylonians kicked their ass again. Oddly enough, because everybody's fallible, they are humans, the Jews still wanted a king! That's what they expected and still expect the Messiah to be. Is a king who leads the people into battle to destroy their enemies. It's why Christ is so important. And this is the one area that I debate friends I've had that are Jewish in the past, is that my problem with Judaism, aside from, no Jesus there, is an emphasis on the material world. The world is important, and saving people is important, but only to an extent. Whereas Christianity focuses on the eternal, the things that really matter. It's part of the reason I'm a Christian. Hardboiled Entertainment asks, is Cardinal Timothy Dolan still on the straight and narrow? He always struck me as having balls, besides an American as a pope. I don't know anything about Timothy Dolan, so I can't really say.
Yeah, I think maybe it's just because the idea that I don't think there should be a pope in the first place. It's, to me, that is like putting the veil back up in the temple.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, what the hell do people think the veil tearing meant?
I don't know.
There's a lot that needs to be discussed still in regards to man and God, and the relationship between the two. One thing I always tell people, read Kierkegaard. In fact, I'm going to give you my top 5 theologians. Are you ready?
Go for it.
Dietrich Bonhoeffer, Martin Luther. Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King. Though Martin Luther King's writings actually were really good. But he pulled a lot from Bonhoeffer, so that's kind of cheating. C.S. Lewis, Soren Kierkegaard, and my brain is blanking. Ravi Zacharias. Though John Lennox is another good one, too.
If you're going to read a book by one of them, what would it be?
By each?
Just one out of all 5. If someone only has time for one.
The Cost of Discipleship by... No. Sorry. Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. That's the default, but if you have time for 2... Read Mere Christianity first, and then the next book you want to read is The Cost of Discipleship by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. The first book...
Mere Christianity would be my first choice, too.
Yeah. Mere Christianity will teach you about why God is who he is, and why you should be a Christian. The second one, Mere Christianity, will tell you what is expected of you. Bonhoeffer was an intense man, and he tried to kill Hitler. Alright, folks, we need to stop. It has been an hour. So, if you have questions for the Overflow, remember it does return this week. Place them into the chat now. Tag Micah and The Hatman. Brainbox is sadly not here at the moment, but he will be gathering those all up for us. Hatman, anything else I'm forgetting?
Except stick to this channel. This is where all the podcasts are going to be from now on.
Yep, you noticed that it's another episode 1. Welcome to year 3, guys.
This is it. This is the start of year 3.
Yep. And this is one that we're aiming to be the biggest one yet. It is do or die for us. So, and also we are going to, I'm going to try to work on a design possibly for a Nintey-Sixth Thesis shirt. So, we'll see what happens there. Stay tuned. We'll see what we can do for you. Also stick around. The entertainment podcast is next. We've got some Me Too stuff to discuss. Hatman saw the new Mission Impossible, the one where Superman reloads his arms. And I've got some heavy metal stuff to talk about. But that's the next hour. So, my name is Micah Curtis.
And I'm Alex Baldwin, also known as the Hatman.
And we'll see you guys soon. Deus Vult.
Deus Vult.